right, I'd like to reconvene and call the regular meeting to order. And I have asked Mr. Andy Dinsmore to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's board meeting. This is a meeting of the Kent School District Board, which is held in public to comply with the Open Public Meetings Act. And I'm going to be reading a process for audience participation today. And the purpose of the board meetings is for the board to conduct its business in public and not to provide a public forum. And those wishing to comment must complete a comment card with your name, address, and purpose, and give it to the board secretary before the meeting begins. And the cards are the white cards with the blue border. They will be accepted tonight until agenda item 3.0 presentations. And the board may interrupt or terminate an individual statement when it's too lengthy, obscene, or irrelevant. Abuse of public comments personally directed towards staff members will not be tolerated. The board as a whole will have the final decision in determining the appropriateness of all such rulings. During the meeting, the board will listen to but not respond to comments from visitors. And we want to be really clear, especially with our students, that we are listening for understanding but not responding tonight. During the meeting, the board will listen to, again, not comment. But when it is your turn to address the board, please state your name and address at the start of your testimony. Identify the organization, if any, that you represent. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes, and you will hear a timer when 3 minutes are up. You will then be asked to stop your remarks. Visitors who have completed a comment card indicating a desire to speak to an agenda item will be given an opportunity to speak to the board at the time the item is addressed by the board. Your name will be called at that portion of the agenda. Written material should be submitted to the superintendent's office at least 1 week in advance of the meeting when providing board members with background information per board procedure. All right, and I would like to ask Dr. Watts if there are any changes to the agenda, please.
Yes, President Venkatasalam, members of the board, Ms. Halley, staff, friends, a supplemental personnel report was added to the consent agenda and a copy is in front of you on the dais.
All right. I would like to ask for a motion to approve the change to the agenda and add the minutes to the consent agenda, please.
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussions, questions? Hearing none, I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right, motion passes. And I'd like to see if there are any comment cards today. It doesn't look like any. We are moving on to 2.0 in our agenda, recognition. And we'll start with our proclamations. We have several tonight to read. So I will call on our board members to start with the National Bullying Prevention Month proclamation.
I have that one to read. And I know this is a continual problem. It's something that we address. So, whereas school bullying has become an increasingly significant problem in the United States and Washington State, and whereas over 20% of the youth in the United States are estimated to be involved in bullying each year, either as a bully or as a victim, and whereas an estimated 160,000 students in kindergarten through 12th grade miss school every day due to a fear of being bullied, and whereas bullying can take many forms, including verbal, physical, and most recently in cyberspace, and can happen in many places on and off school grounds. And whereas it is important for Kent School District parents, students, teachers, and school administrators to be aware of bullying and to encourage discussion of the problem as a school community. And whereas the Kent School Board has an active policy prohibiting harassment, intimidation, and bullying, encouraging positive behaviors and eliminating bullying behaviors for all students, employees, parents, legal guardians, volunteers, and community members. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Kent School District recognizes the month of October 2018 as National Bullying Prevention Month in the Kent School District, with the intention that the issue of bullying and its prevention be discussed in Kent School District schools and classrooms during that time.
All right. I would like to ask Mr. Ryan Simpson, if he's here. Ryan Simpson, Northwood Middle School Leadership, Family and Consumer Sciences and Art teacher, to accept the proclamation, please.
I just want to real quickly thank the board for recognizing this month as National Bullying Prevention Month. As a leadership teacher for 6 years at Northwood Middle School, October is a month that we really do focus on this topic. And we live in a world nowadays where the bullying that was happening when I was in high school is very different than the bullying that these kids are now facing. But it still is based in that same idea of trying to take power from other students. And a lot of it goes on behind the scenes nowadays. And so part of what my class does, and I know other programs in our district do, is really try to put a face to it. Because we hear a lot of the statistics, but when we actually tell the stories, put a face to it and make it real, that's when we, as staff, and also when the students realize that they have the power to step up and start making a change. So I would encourage any of you to feel free during this month to stop by Northwood, see some of the work that my students are doing, some of the things that we discuss, debate, do simulations of, and just are doing within our schools. So thank you once again for supporting this.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Simpson. I'd like to ask our next board member to read the proclamation for National School Lunch Week, please.
Yes, I'll read that. So whereas having access and eating a nutritious lunch is an important part of a student's educational day and positively impacts their ability to learn, and whereas the Kent School District is an active participant in the National School Lunch Program, which is dedicated to the health and well-being of our nation's children, with the goal to provide nutritional, attractive, and affordable lunches to all students, and whereas the district staff of the Nutritional Service Department work together to provide quality lunch program that offers healthy choices that include local and regional food products identified through an expanding farm-to-school program, promotes nutrition education through menu choices, product merchandising, and working with community partners, and actively supports the goals of academic community. And whereas this year's theme, School Lunch, Lots to Love, helps students and school nutrition professionals share what each loves most about school lunches with parents, school officials, and community. And whereas research shows that children who participate in school lunch program perform better in the classroom, therefore be it resolved, the Kent School District Board of Directors supports the work of the nutrition service staff and proudly proclaims the week of October 15th through the 19th, 2018, National School Lunch Week in the Kent School District.
All right, I think we have Teresa Fields from Nutrition Services and Andrew Dinsmore. I apologize, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Watts, school board. And I just want to say it is an honor to be serving healthy school lunches. And each and every day, there are lunch heroes in each and every school serving healthy meals. And at also at Central Kitchen. So, thank you. Thank you for.
Thank you, Andrew. So next, we would like to call the board member to read the proclamation for National Principals Month, please.
All right, I have that one. All right. Whereas the National Association of Secondary School Principals and the National Association of Elementary School Principals have declared the month of October 2018 as National Principals Month. Whereas principals are educational visionaries, instructional and assessment leaders, disciplinarians, community builders, budget analysts, facilities managers, and administrators of legal and contractual obligations. Whereas principals work collaboratively with teachers and parents to develop and implement a clear mission, high curriculum standards, and performance goals. Whereas the vision, actions, and dedication of principals provide the mobilizing force behind any school reform effort. Whereas the celebration of National Principals Month honors elementary school, middle school, and high school principals in ensuring that every child has access to a high-quality education. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Kent School District proclaim the month of October as National Principals Month.
All right, thank you. We'd like to invite Mr. Jim Shield, principal at Matson Middle School and Kent Principals Association president, to accept the proclamation. And I'd like also to ask all of our principals to stand, please.
Please.
Thank you. President Vengadassalam, members of the board, Dr. Watts, on behalf of the almost 80 members of the Kent Principals Association, principals and assistant principals, I want to thank you for this this recognition for us this month. I think the resolution itself took some of what I was going to say, which was, the question that I get most often, and I'm sure my colleagues do, is what do you do all day, right? Because kids ask that, parents, right? Because they have the picture of principals on TV, right? Either from Ferris Bueller or whatever, right? And the reality is there's nothing that a principal or an assistant principal doesn't do that goes on in a school every day. Not just the disciplinarian or the instructional leader, but too often the substitute teacher, the custodian, the building manager, the groundskeeper, the school nurse, all of those things. I've heard Dr. Watts say so many times, principals are mayors of their little community, and that's very true. And we do all of that work because it is the vocation that we have, it is the passion that we have. We know it benefits our kids, and I'm very proud to be able to work with such an amazing group of caring and dedicated and compassionate and highly skilled professionals. So thank you so much for this, and we look forward to continuing to work with you and partner with you for the rest of the school year. Thank you.
I'd like to read a statement before our next two proclamations. The Kent School District is committed to the success of every student, family, and staff in each of its schools. Learning and work environments are enriched and improved by the contributions, perspectives, and the very presence of diverse participants. To that end, we have two cultural heritage celebrations this month we want to recognize with a proclamation. And while we will not single out any one person or group of people to represent their entire race or culture to receive this proclamation, we do believe that it is important to take these opportunities for celebration and recognition as we work to create a learning environment that's respectful, welcoming, and inclusive of every student, family, and staff, in which their diversity is valued and contributes to their success. So in stating that, we'd like to recognize September 15th to October 15th as National Hispanic Heritage Month. And I'd like to call on Director Hardy to read the proclamation, please.
Whereas September 15 through October 15 is celebrated throughout the United States as National Hispanic Heritage Month, providing an opportunity to honor the contributions of Hispanic leaders and students of Kent School District in our community. And whereas this year's national theme, Hispanics, One Endless Voice to Enhance Our Traditions, invites us to reflect on Hispanic Americans' traditions, history, and culture. And whereas in the Kent School District, the Hispanic community now constitutes 22.6% of the district's student population, with more than 6,300 students identifying as Hispanic. And whereas the Kent School District is committed to the promise that regardless of where students come from or what they look like, all are afforded an equal opportunity to graduate from Kent School District as young adults who are globally competitive learners, prepared to excel in college, careers, and in life. And whereas the Kent School District is dedicated to working together to address the challenges still facing Hispanic students in equity and access so that they may prosper in school in King County, in Washington State, and around the world. Therefore, be it resolved, the Kent School District Board of Directors recognizes September 15 through October 15, 2018 as National Hispanic Heritage Month, with the intention that Hispanic heritage be recognized, discussed, and celebrated in Kent School District schools and classrooms during that time.
Thank you. And our final proclamation is October is the Filipino-American History Month. And I will read the proclamation for the Filipino-American History Month. Whereas Filipino Americans are one of the largest Asian American and Pacific Islander ethnic populations in Washington State and the third largest in the United States, and whereas Filipino Americans contribute to the enrichment and quality of life in our state and the nation, and whereas the earliest documented Filipino presence in the continental United States was October 18, 1587, when the first Luzonos Indios arrived in Morro Bay, California, and whereas Filipino American History Month provides an opportunity to promote the history of Filipino American history and culture, recognize the richness of Filipino American ethnicity, and honor the contributions of Filipino Americans, especially their service with distinction in the United States military. And whereas Washington's educational leaders are developing programs and resources to support stronger partnerships between families, schools, and communities, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Kent School District joins Washington State Governor Jay Inslee and the Washington State House of Representatives in proclaiming the month of October as Filipino American History Month. Yes, so we are taking photographs, and we'll start with our first proclamation, Bullying Prevention Month. Mr. Simpson, and we'll follow with National School Lunch Week, and then our principals, please. We are up to 3.0, our presentations, and I will call on Director of Communications and Public Affairs, Melissa Laramie, to provide an update on the board communication plan.
Good evening, President Vengadaslam, members of the board, Dr. Watts, Ms. Halley. Very excited this evening to give an update on your first board communications plan, especially after our work session last week. First, I want to take an opportunity before we begin to recognize, given that Monday was Indigenous Peoples Day, that we are on the Duwamish land. There are 29 federally recognized tribes in Washington state. Duwamish is not one of them. There are 7 other bands or tribes in Washington state that are also not recognized. There are 573 federally recognized tribes in the United States and 245 who are not federally recognized. So I just want to take a moment to recognize that we are on the land of the Duwamish people and pay honor to and respect to those people. So, earlier this year, as a team, as the board superintendent governance team, you worked to develop your communication goals, and one of those goals was included developing a communications plan. And over the summer, and particularly over the last 2 months in work sessions, we've been working together to create a a communications plan for the board that is aligned to the district communications plan and is specifically targeting these goals that you developed around communications. And I want to give a brief update on where we're at with those and where we're going next, as it's very specifically called out in your plan that we will be doing monthly meetings, the first work session of every month. So communication, I do want to point out, as we've worked on this, I really appreciate that through the work sessions, the opportunity that I've had to work with you just to participate and facilitate these conversations. Just seeing how complex that this is, because I think we started with the intent of this being really a focus on external communications and how you're going to communicate to the KSD community at large. But really, there's a lot to do with the internal communications and how you operate and work together as a team, and the complexities around communication, because communication really is any process by which we exchange information between 2 individuals or a group of individuals. And so I appreciate the opportunity to just kind of peel back those layers and see how complex this work is. It's not just about a website or a flyer or posting to social media, but the meaning that you're giving to the word communication and just really focusing on this. I want to thank you for your commitment to this work for our district and on behalf of our students. So the plan components of the communication plan that you've developed together really are comprised of 4 main areas. You've worked together to identify your audiences, and then we worked together to determine your communication strategies. Next, we worked on defining the most effective communication methods to achieve your goals. And then we've worked on defining, choosing roles and responsibilities, and then really selecting the data, the tools, and the means for assessing the effectiveness of your communication efforts. Knowing that, of course, this communications plan is a living document that will change as we go, and as we assess quarterly, we may make changes. And we've even made changes in the first couple of months as we've identified what will work best to achieve the goals that you've laid before you. So I'm going to focus on two main areas in the communications method, because really the other pieces and components of your plan are pretty finalized and ready to post on your website as you plan to do. But we do have 2 areas that you want to continue to finalize. last week, in the last work session on October 3rd, you determined that answers to questions raised at board meetings or any of your quarterly community conversations with the board this year will be posted in a Q&A format in a timely manner within a week or sooner on your board website page. One solution we're continuing to work with together on is to seek an affordable and sustainable solution on how to provide an anonymous online public-facing forum for discussions so that you can monitor district-wide concerns without violating the Open Public Meeting Act laws and still proactively address concerns at board meetings with the superintendent and be responsive to the community. At the next communications plan review, which will be the first week of November, I'll bring back some solutions with pricing so you can review that and consider, along with the other commitments that you have, what your budget will allow and what makes the most sense for you. A second area that also has budget implications for you is requiring further investigation by both you and by us as staff is the live streaming of board meetings. So at the last meeting, we reviewed the data of all the board live streams for this year, just the first couple of months, and all of last school year. So we looked at viewership, and we looked at we saw the spikes. We saw when there was a high increase in viewership. We saw the average monthly meetings. We talked about the cost of those and what goes into it in the staffing. And then we talked about what some options were for what it could look like. So I'm continuing to work with human resources and IT staff to see what other options could be. So again, we'll come back in November with a different set of alternative options so that we can continue to provide streaming. So we did identify what needs to be done short-term and then what are some long-term solutions. So looking ahead, as a result of the work that you've done so far, we have the first of the quarterly community conversations with the board starting this week. So 2 on Thursday and 1 on Saturday. We have your second e-newsletter scheduled to go out this month of the monthly e-newsletters, and that's going to go out on October 19th. We have discussed using time during a work session with your attorney to do some OPMA training so that there's some consistent understanding around the OPMA laws. And just we've talked each time we've met about continuously reviewing data from the communication efforts and everything that you're doing in your plan and revisiting that communications plan as we talked about. It's a living document. We'll continue to change it and adjust it as we go. And then also making sure that all of the efforts that you're making, that we review everything through an equity lens. So everything from translations to just really ensuring that we're adhering to the race equity policy, that we're thinking about things through that lens so that we're seeking to reach all families, all staff, and all stakeholders in our community. And with that, that's the update for this quarter. Any questions?
I just want to thank you for your work with us. So I know some of us, me in particular, would come back with things after. And so I appreciate your patience and I appreciate your understanding and working with us through this.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Melissa, do we have a go live date or whatever we call it for the questions and answers that we want to post? Do we know when we're going to be able to have that up?
Yeah, so we didn't have a whole lot of questions at the last one, and we were able to address a lot of those in the room, so I didn't post anything. And then the couple that we talked about at the work session, I wasn't super clear if we wanted to post those last few, so we can talk about that. But I'm ready to go as soon as we're ready. I know you have the meetings starting this week, so as soon as we talked about the plan, as soon as you send those to me, I'm ready. So I have the page laid out and ready to go live within a week from Thursday. So, or sooner, as soon as we're ready.
It was actually my question. When can I send you the questions from our community conversation tomorrow? But as soon as we have them.
Yeah, so we'll have the questions, and we may have some of the answers, and then some of them we might have to work together to get. And we talked about consolidating because some of them might be repeats between the two on Thursday and then on Saturday. So I'm not sure if you're going to coordinate, but we'll see each other next week at a work session, so we can talk about that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but but absolutely within a week.
So I'd also like to echo, thank you for helping us do this. This is, it's been a lot of work, but it's also, I think, a really good thing for our district and our communication. I know they'll be on the board page, so you have to go to the school board page, but since it's fairly new, we'll be able to put something on the home page that leads people to go there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We can do it as an update for the community conversations with you and link people there.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? All right. Thank you so much for all the work you've done, and the team too. Last night I had a chance to chat with them as well. It's a really collaborative effort on part of a lot of people, and you especially leading the team, and Karen as well, helping us out. One thing that we did have a robust discussion at the last work session was about what it is that the community would want to see happen, and I think Debbie brought that up, that question. So, I mean, it is something that we will pose to our audience in the community conversations, and we welcome and value the input we'll get and how the public wants to handle some of these question and answer sessions as well. So thank you for giving that opportunity and for that discussion.
Absolutely. And we also talked about utilizing the polling function within your newsletter as an opportunity to engage in that two-way communication as well. So we can activate that too this month if you'd like.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right, 3.02 are student enrollment and demographic trends, and I'd like to call on Director of Research Ashley Berkland to present student enrollment and demographic trend information, please.
Good evening, President Bengadaslam, Board of School Board members, Dr. Watts, and Ms. Howley. I'm going to take a second here just to get into the presentation.
Sure.
Doing things just a little bit differently. Okay. I am Ashley Berkland, the Director of Research. I have been here since July 1st. I am a member of the Organizational Effectiveness Community, which is new as of this year. And I have the opportunity to take you through some of our enrollment and demographic trends over the past 10 or 11 years to see how things have changed. There are two goals for tonight's presentation. One is to have a better understanding of our enrollment trends and how they've changed over the years and by grade, and also to have a better understanding how our demographics have changed, including race and ethnicity, poverty levels, special education, and language. Okay. This is our first look at enrollment over time, and this is from the past 6 years, and it's based on September enrollment that we report to the state for funding. We use September because October is not available until next week. And so September doesn't include running start data, so it's a little bit different than what we'll see in October, but this is consistent September to September data since 2013-14. And as you're seeing, and we know, there's been a drop from last year to this year. And we know that's not unique to our district. Our surrounding districts are seeing it as well. And some of the districts to the south are seeing an increase. So this is just us seeing it again in our data here.
And to be clear, when we look back in time, it's not the average annual enrollment. When we look at those prior years, it's just September.
Yep, the September snapshot.
Gotcha.
Yep. Yeah. And we'll plan on updating this once we have October. This is another look at enrollment. This is last year compared to this year, September snapshot, and looking at the changes by grade. So you can see that we're down in most grades, and we're up in 6th and 7th grade. So that's something to take a further look into, what's happening in those two grades. And another thing to think about in 11th and 12th grade is if there's an impact from Running Start, and we'll have a better, we'll have a chance to look into that next week.
And then this I was like, data question. This is pure enrollment by grade.
Yes.
But when I look at it, last year's 1,809 11th graders are this year's 1,624 12th graders.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I was actually just doing that today and looking around like, oh, that's a great view too. Yeah. So that's our enrollment by grade. And then next, this is why we're doing the presentation a little bit differently. To look at our demographic trends here, we're using a Tableau dashboard tool, which is interactive, and we're going to be moving towards this for a lot of our future presentations. So this is kind of our first foray into doing that. But you've seen this slide. This is the ethnicity trend over time since 2007-8. And you see that decline in our white population from 48.8% down to 32.8% this year. With the functionality of this dashboard, we can hover over and it'll show the group name, it'll show that percentage again, and it'll also show the number of students. So we're about 9,200 white students right now compared to 14,595 in 2007-8. And we can also quickly see that there's been an increase in our Hispanic Latino population and also an increase in our Asian population. And then with the functionality of this dashboard, we can quickly change here and look at ELL status over time. So we're changing here. The blue line on the bottom is the students who are active ELL, and we can see that increase from 12% to 20% this year. And we can look at that compared to our ethnicity trends and see how that plays out. I'm going to flip over to free and reduced lunch status. I think this is a really interesting display. I haven't seen anything quite show up this way. In 2007-8, we were, a majority of students were not eligible for free and reduced lunch. We were at 59.3%. And then around 2011-12, we see that shift, and then we had more students who qualified for free and reduced lunch than didn't. And now we're kind of even. So it's an interesting story, and you can think back of what's been happening at those times and years and kind of match it up with what you're seeing here. And then
I know we're looking backward in time. This is where you have a projection of where the trend is going. If we look at the past couple years, free and reduced lunch may be on the rise, but slightly, or is it more of the trend of the 11, 12 through 15, 16, which is a decline?
I do not know, but that's a great question. Yeah, we have the data to do some predictions and think about what that can look like. Yeah. And then the last piece here that I'm going to show is special education status. And we can see that's been pretty flat over the years, so around 11-12%. One other thing that I'll show you about this dashboard is there's some other filters in here, so you can take out school years, and you can look at a specific school. For tonight's purposes, we're looking at the whole district, but this is something that we'll be able to share with our schools and with you as you have follow-up questions on things. This slide is showing our top 15 languages by school level. We have 137 languages spoken in Kent School District this year, so quite diverse. And this is by level, and the numbers next to it are the number of students who speak that language as their home language. So this doesn't get at all of the diversity. There are families that speak English. This is reporting home language as something other than English. One thing that's interesting to note is the change in elementary. We see the top 5 or 6 are about the same from year to year, but when you start looking at 7th, 8th, you see different languages showing up in elementary that you don't see in high school. Dari was not even reported prior to 2016, and it's here, I think, as the top 7th language for our elementary students. And then This is another way to look at our demographics and how they have changed. So this is our seniors compared to our kindergarten students. So you can see the demographics, ethnicity look a little bit different. The more Hispanic students for our kindergartners, fewer white students, and then also fewer Asian students in our new class of kindergartners. If you look at the free and reduced lunch statistics, they're fairly similar. I'm going to skip over the ELL piece and save that for a minute. Special ed's fairly flat, and those top languages are pretty similar, but you see a few differences there. Back to the ELL piece. This year's seniors are 8% ELL. This year's kindergarten students are 36% ELL. What we're not accounting for is that students will exit. So we have had many students exit, and that's a great success that now we're to 8% of our seniors are qualifying for ELL. I actually went back and did a similar comparison and of this year's juniors when they were kindergartners, and a little over 30% were ELL at that time. So there are more ELL students in K as we've been going on. So that's been a change. That is the last slide I have for you here. Just a quick overview of what's been happening with enrollment and demographics. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
And this is in here. Do you look at enrollment by, I don't know, feeder school, we'll call it that? So these data specifically, when you look at these trends, this is for the overall district, but how does it compare to the high schools and their feeder schools that roll up? Basically, I'm trying to get to areas of Kent that it might have expanded or changed over time, and do we see a lagging or leading indicator for certain demographics in terms of certain areas of the district?
We have not, but that's definitely a possibility, and that's something great to look into, because is this change happening in one specific area, or is it dispersed across the district? We can all hypothesize about that, but we have the data to actually be able to look at that.
And then the other thing, I actually mentioned back in the enrollment by grade, now that I'm looking at it, the last year's 10th and 11th graders, and therefore this year's 11th and 12th, have the biggest drop. And I just, hopefully at some point I want to know more about that. Specifically 10th to 11th grade, you're talking 300 students. Now, I don't know if there's a component of that is more or in running start, so that doesn't count. So they get into that in 11th grade and they just don't count as FTEs because they're not here. But they're still in the buildings. But like, what is around that measure? Because they're 10th, 11th grade, you're effectively in the same school. You know, you aren't really dropping down unless you're going somewhere else, compared to the other grades, which are plus or minus 1% to 2%.
Right, the biggest change is happening in high school. When we get the October enrollment numbers back, they will account for running starts, so we'll be able to look at that directly and see what impact that has.
So do we have any, probably roughly how many running start students we had last year? Trying to remember.
I think we had around 400 full-time. Yeah, but I can look and see. There's somewhere around there. And that's one thing we'll do when we follow up, look at how many we had last year and see if it's a significant jump this year.
Okay, so my question had to do with the enrollment by grade. Also, I think, you know, every year we talk about this enrollment by grade, and one of the concerns I have with that is that we're not looking at mobility. And so the mobility factor, is that in a controlled environment? Are we looking at that information? Or, you know, when we're looking at, 50 students should be in 12th grade if they moved from 11th to 12th. So that, I don't know, I guess that's a question. Is that something that we're looking at, or we should be looking at?
These aren't, but that's another great way to look at it, see who's continuously enrolled and who's showing up the next year, because this is just a snapshot of students who are here, and they may not have been here last year. So who's staying, who's leaving, and we know that there are places that are more mobile than others. So that's something that we can take a look at, but is not reflected here.
Okay, all right. And then And then, let's see. So I would like to see, especially at the high school level, we know that Auburn has increased their number of students, and so I would like to see if our students are going to neighboring districts, if we can do some analysis on that as well.
Yeah, that'd be hard to capture.
Well, Kent gets wavering out. You should
Yeah,
have
if they
that
still
form.
live here in the district, we could get that, yeah.
So that's all I had.
Just Auburn, there's quite a few districts that could.
Sure. But that's the one that went up. And is closest to our school. So that and also the charter schools. I'm interested in hearing how many of our kids went over to charter schools.
And I think you could
Or
find that out with
Excel.
records requests, because they have to request the
records
records
to
to the school, so
transfer.
we should be able to find that out by records request.
Yeah. So thank you very much.
Yeah,
for
thank you.
this. I appreciate it.
Just want to take a point of personal privilege and say that to our organizational effectiveness team and to our research and assessment, it's a labor of love, but it is also a point of departure, I think, for the work that we've done in the recent past to where we're going in the future. And that's, first of all, is data collection and making sure that we're collecting data in the appropriate way with fidelity so that we can visualize it in a way that the average individual, and what we often say is so that a third grader can understand what it is that we're trying to explain. And then finally to actualize the information so we can turn it into information so that we can then actually make informed decisions about how to address the needs of our students. So I want to thank the team and obviously your questions today. As vibrant as they are, we're going to make sure we get those answers and then be able to show them in a way that we all understand and can use that data. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we are up to 4.0 reports, and we are going to speak about the capital improvement and school construction bond sale update, and we will call Executive Director of Budget and Finance, Ben Rarick, to provide an update on the capital improvement and school construction bond sale.
Good evening. So some of what I may have to share may seem repetitive of our previous conversation, but for everybody's benefit, I have what I think is some really good news for the district. Just to set the stage, we have, as a community, been talking about the plan for the second sale of the 2016 bond measure that passed for the voters, and I think it was November of 2016, and you sold your first issue as a district shortly thereafter in 2017. You were planning to sell another issue this year, and indeed you did today, but there was some considerations and strategy about, how much to sell in an environment where we're still working on bringing our bond rating back to where we know it needs to be, and concerns about, well, maybe we shouldn't sell all that we had originally planned to sell in that environment. It turned out quite well for us that market conditions were such that we were able to sell for the whole $80 million that was originally planned to sell. So the first fact I'd ask you to take away today is we did ultimately sell the full amount that we originally planned to sell, even in the first schedule back when you passed it before the voters. So that's good news. Second piece of good news is that anytime you sell a bond, it's not unlike when you go for your mortgage as a homeowner or any other piece of lending. What interest rate did you pay, right? And in the bond world, so just as a frame of reference, the first sale that you did, which again I think was in January, February of 2017, what's called your true interest cost for that bond was about 3.3%, which is pretty good. But I'm pleased to say that with the sale that we culminated today, we came in considerably below that level with a true interest cost of 2.966%, which is I'm thrilled with, really, frankly. Anything below 3% is really quite good. And so we had a couple of market conditions thing working in our favor. And so not only did we sell the full amount, but we sold the full amount at a rate that I think we can all be very comfortable with. And third point I'd like you to know, again, I think a small victory here for the district as we're working to really scrutinize every dollar of expense, whether it be in the general fund or the capital projects fund. We saved a considerable amount of money in our, what we would call our transactional fees. So again, back to the first sale, back in 2017, we paid a rate of about $13 per thousand raised for the fees of our underwriting firm. For a variety of reasons that I'm happy to go into if you want, we paid $3.75, which I guess is quite nearly a quarter of what we paid the first time, which is about a $750,000 savings in the capital projects fund, and something that I think we need to celebrate when we have the moments to celebrate. And that took a lot of work and was a great thing to have come to fruition today. Just to give you a sense of how other districts are in the market and how we did, I'm thrilled to say that despite what continued to be challenging credit environment for Kent as a district, we actually did better than a lot of districts that have been in the market recently. We actually, our spread was a little less than Tuckwillah's from a few weeks ago as a comparable district in our South King County region. And Vancouver, which is one of the best credit profiles in the state, being a large district and I think a AA1 bond rating, we quite nearly matched them. We were 0.05% below the true interest cost that they paid. So I'm thrilled with where we landed. And so in the end, the district will be receiving its second issue of $80 million, which we expect to receive before November 1st of this year. And there quite literally is no aspect of this deal that I wasn't really just very enthusiastic about. So some things fell our way finally, and I'm pleased to share those with you this evening. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
Well, I think when we talked before, we said, what could go wrong, and what that really meant to us is we kind of had two things to pull. Is if we didn't get all the money we wanted, well, we don't fund all the projects we want.
Right.
That didn't happen, so we got all the money we wanted.
Right.
Or if it costs too more, meaning the interest is too much,
Yes.
that tax rate would have to go up.
Right.
That did not. So
No, it did not, yeah.
We're flat, I guess.
That's
as
right.
to what we're at now.
That's right. So there's the tax rate that results from these debt service collections will just remain flat into the future at the same rate. We collected the full amount. We collected at a rate that is more than competitive, and we saved money transactionally. So all in, and we're getting the funding in a timely manner too. So we expect to get it before November 1st. And originally we were kind of thinking, maybe middle of November. So we pounced on the market conditions when they were right, and here we are. So.
Very nice.
Thank you for your timely pouncing.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, pouncing, yeah.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All the work that went into that. I'm excited to see the projects that we'll be able to accomplish.
Me as well.
Yeah, so Ben, are we going to have a, I don't know how this works, but what has been done with the first issuance and the second issuance, and then we have 92 million, and how that's going to be structured so that we're financially fit in the coming years.
You
Will we
mean
have that
a
kind of
recap of how the money from the first issue was spent on projects in Covington Elementary? I would be happy to try to arrange it. I wouldn't be the right person to do that. And as best of my recollection, we had one about three or 4 months ago, but it might be time for, whenever.
Where the money, the second issuance. And
prospectively.
the balance,
yes. Okay. Yeah.
What is
I
left
would be happy
do,
to.
because we have to carry that forward.
Sure, absolutely.
Another how many years? 8 years?
Yeah. So I'd be happy to collaborate on a presentation with our colleagues in the Capital Facilities Department.
All right. Thank you so much for your work.
Yeah. No, it was great for things to it was good. Thanks.
Yes. Okay, we are up to 5.0, Board of Directors discussion and approval. And we are going to go to our 5.01 professional services contract for 2018-19 between Glover Empowerment Mentoring, GEM, and the Kent School District. I would like to ask for a motion to approve professional services contract for 2018-19 between Glover Empowerment Mentoring, GEM, and Kent School District.
I so move.
Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Are there any discussions or questions?
Well, two basic questions we think about. Is this a new vendor, continuation of existing vendor? And specifically, it talks about using LAP funds. So is this potentially that we are using funds that come to us through that categorical spending? Therefore, if we don't use these services, we can't reallocate those funds to anything else?
Thank you. Yes, these are LAP funds. They are LAP Readiness to Learn funds. Because of that, then they need to go before the board to get approved. And so the Readiness to Learn dollars are specifically designed to be done in consultation with community-based organizations in order to meet the needs of and support our students. And this is a new contract. We have the Men on the Move project has been going on for 3 years so far. We've been kind of doing it in-house and piecing together some different funding sources, and we've always kind of envisioned that a community-based organization might be better suited to do some of this work. Kendrick Glover, who is the leader of GEM, has been a part of this movement for the last few years, so he's uniquely poised and has some connections that will just take this to the next level, I believe.
Thank you.
I have a question too, Randy. I see the schools that are going to be involved.
Yeah.
In the past, were there that many schools involved, or was it because it was cobbled together?
No, it's actually always been targeting 5 of our high schools, our 4 comprehensive high schools and Kent Phoenix Academy, and our 6 middle schools. So it continues to focus on those schools.
So it looks to me like it's going to be able to pull in more students in a more...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we hope to, one of the big differences, the ability to bring in some more community mentors, which is where it's kind of like when you rely on volunteer forces, you kind of get volunteer hours in some cases. And so by just providing a bit of a stipend for our community mentors to recognize that it takes time to come in and do this commitment, that we feel like we'll have a deeper commitment in the schools. And so beyond just the convenings that we have, there'll be work that they'll be doing in the schools with them in between the times we see them at the district office and in these larger convenings.
And I would just like to put in a plug right now for Women on the Move. I'd like to see some of our young women of color also served.
That's actually part of this plan, and working with them is we have already talked about the fact that our goal is to do 1 convening with females this year based on this, and really then ramp it up again for next year into more. So yes, we're doing that.
Good.
Randy, I just wanted to say that I think in 2016, we talked about really formalizing Men on the Move, and that was during a budget discussion, and I'm really glad to see that we are, it's almost a line item in our budget now.
Right.
And that says a lot in terms of equity and how we're addressing this, that it's not an afterthought, but
Right.
it's an actual official contract. So I just want to say I really appreciate seeing that. And thank you for everybody's work, including, of course, Jim.
Okay, great, thank you.
Next is 5.02, oh, sorry. We need to have call for a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. All right, motion passes. 5.02, professional services contract for 2018-19 between Asian Counseling Services, Asian Counseling and Referral Services, and Kent School District. I'd like to ask for a motion to approve professional services contract, please.
I so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Are there any discussions or questions?
I have a couple.
I have the same question. This is just clarification. Mentions using high poverty LAP dollars, making sure that we're utilizing those to the best extent that they can be used. And just questions about the vendor. Have we used them before? How comfortable are they with the Kent School District setting, things like that?
This comes from Kent Meridian High School. They are using their high poverty dollars, which they get to direct and control. And my understanding is that they were looking for a greater level of mental health service than they had previously been getting through some work with Kent Youth and Family Services that was able to provide about a day's worth. But the mental health needs at Kent Meridian, they felt like they needed more, and so they worked with Asian Counseling to get this set up, and there will be a counselor on site 4 days a week starting this year. And so this is a new contract, but one of the things we did want to do was line it up with, we have a couple other mental health contracts, and so we wanted to make sure that the contracts were similar.
Great, thank you.
I have a couple questions on the, this is the purpose of the agreement in response to the high degree of behavioral health concerns by students attending KSD schools. So it talks about behavioral health concerns, but then the objectives are to increase the percentage of students accessing and receiving mental health services. And then the second one is increased academic performance of students accessing and receiving mental health services. It doesn't talk about behavioral things. I know it's sort of a leap going, if we get the behavior in line, then maybe the academics will be, but I know one of the other contracts did address behavior.
Right. Behavioral health is kind of a broad term that is being used around mental health and substance abuse, which are often co-occurring. So the idea around that, most of the agencies who now deal in mental health call themselves behavioral health. And so this focuses on mental health, but as an agency, you know, if they saw some co-occurring, they would be, you know, addressing those and referring them maybe out to where they need. As far as academic, we try to throw we always want any kind of supports that we are giving in terms of anything involving their social emotional needs to ultimately have an impact on their academic performance. And so that is a recognition that because you are using LAP funds, part of this is around, we're hoping that they will be able to achieve better in school and get to graduation.
And then in the 5.0, the payment section, the second sentence in there says, other services ACRS may provide KSD in which they do not receive a direct payment from KSD will be covered in a separate memorandum of understanding. ACRS agrees to bill KSD monthly for services. Do we have any idea what the scope of that is? The things that they might be billing us for, other than the amount that?
No, what that's we have an amount, and it will be billed monthly based on spread out throughout the year. That is how all of our contracts are now reading. So the ones we had with Valley Cities and Kent Youth and Family read the same way. The recognition there is that there will be a separate MOU. So this year we needed contracts for those that we were actually paying services for. And in some cases, these organizations not only provide us services that we pay for, but we also maintain an MOU for many different mental health agencies in the area to be able to see current clients on our campuses if that is what works best for the client and for, you know, the health organization. So in addition to the ones what we have contracts with, we have a bunch of MOUs with mental health organizations that allow them to see kids on our campus. So it's just recognizing that they may be seeing other kids at either KM or one of our other campuses through an existing relationship, and that would be covered under a separate MOU, not this contract.
Okay, and that's with other agencies, is that right? For this?
It's similar for all agencies. That's just similar language that we use in all of those agreements.
All right, thanks.
Okay. I don't have any question on 5.02. All right, so we will call for a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. And motion passes. Next up is our professional services contract for 2018-19 between the High-Cala Educational Consulting LLC and Kent School District. And I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the professional services contract for 2018-19.
I so move.
Is there a second, please?
I'll second that.
All right, are there any discussions or questions from the board?
Yes, well, because this mentions specifically using the same high poverty lap dollars at Kent Meridian. So this is more about, is this vendor providing supplemental services to the one we discussed previously? Are they providing, addressing separate student groups, whatever? How are they working with each other or not at all?
Thank you for the question. Yes, it is a LAP, in this case, high poverty dollars. Just to bring us back to last year, recall that we did not use all of our high poverty dollars specifically at KM. Those dollars did carry over this year, so those are part of the dollars that are being used first. And yes, they are supplemental in nature. They need to specifically work with those teachers supporting students in need of additional support. So that's from the professional development side, meeting the needs of those kids.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, I guess, Israel, I'm just wondering why it couldn't serve as the same type of contract as the others? Because it is professional services. She's an independent contractor.
Yeah, specifically, as Randy mentioned, for LAP, the Readiness to Learn dollars are different than the LAP high poverty dollars. They're specifically for that school. We actually cannot, as a district, dictate how they use those dollars. We can, for basic LAP dollars, recall there's two funding sources. Those are the ones we do allocate on a formula basis to the school. So that's the difference in the two funding sources.
Okay, thank you.
Good
Appreciate
question.
that. All right. So I would like to ask for a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. And motion passes. Next up is our professional services contract for 2018-19 between Ohio Educational Consulting and Kent School District. And I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the professional services contract for 2018-19, please.
I so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Are there any discussions or questions from the board?
Just similar confirmation questions, working same kind of services at KM using high poverty lap. One, you can ask, is it rollover from last year? Is it new this year? Whatever it is. And then how does it work with the other three? Is it supplemental? Is it completely separate? You know.
Yeah, same answer here. Specifically here, it's math. The previous one you just voted on was ELA.
Okay.
So for math, that's specifically for this one. Okay. Yes, and we do have, by the way, a scope of work for both of those, giving us a breakdown similar to as Randy mentioned. So, yeah.
Great, thank you.
I guess I have one other question. Do we have other schools that are also receiving these dollars that we may see contracts coming
Yes.
in the future?
So specifically high poverty dollars, we do have other schools receive. They have to meet the threshold for that. And I think your question is, are we using these services in other schools?
Or similar services?
Similar services, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Bell. So I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. All right, motion passes. And we are up to our consent agenda. And I'd like to ask the board if you'd like to pull an agenda item for discussion, please.
Yes, please, let's have 6.03 separately.
6.03 is the change.
Changes to the
paraeducator.
KAP
Okay,
collective bargaining agreement.
all right. So I would like to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda minus 6.03, please.
I so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Are there any discussions? No. Okay, I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor of the consent agenda minus 6.03? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right, 6.03, Ross.
I just want to clarify and kind of get it officially. This is a tentative agreement. We'll just make sure that KP has ratified this agreement with their members and that we're all ready to go, and this is just our formality. Yes. Yes, okay. I wanted to be sure.
Well, I wouldn't say it's a formality, but it's been ratified by CAP.
Okay, been ratified by them. Good. Thank you. That was all.
All right. So I'd like to ask for a motion to approve 6.03, please.
I so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. All right, motion passes. We're up to 7.0, communication from the audience, and it looks like there are no cards from the audience tonight. So we will go to our legislative update with Director Hardy, please.
Sure. Well, so in absence of a legislative session, updates surrounding other legislative areas, WASDA and OSPI. There are three good updates from OSPI as funding has been on our minds all year. State Superintendent has put out his K-12 budget, talking about the new funding model, talking about how that's going to change, and has recommendations that that the State Superintendent Office is providing to the governor and the state legislature. They're only recommendations, but included in there is something that was a priority of ours last year, and we can talk about, which is a change to the local levy lid. It was moved to $1.50 and thus constrains the amount of money we can raise. These proposed changes increase that through a variety of options. But then basically that's the idea of the state, is that the funding model that they put through before might have gotten us some of the way there, but it wasn't complete. And so even OSPI is suggesting changes to that funding model going forward. So those changes would necessarily be on our priorities as we go into the next legislative session. Now, I know that WASDA had the legislative priority session that hasn't completed their priorities just yet, but I wanted to point out something that we've been talking about a while. We all should have gotten a nice, lovely WASDA newsletter, I guess it is, with a step-by-step guide for adding student representatives to your board. And so I know we talked about that before, but it's a highlight across the state in terms of something that we can do, and now recommended and supported by WASDA. So that concludes my legislative update.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Watts, Superintendent report, please.
Yes, thank you. President Vengadaslam, members of the board, Ms. Halley, community, staff, friends. First of all, we recognized our principals among many others today. National Principals Appreciation Month is October, quite a bit to celebrate in this month for our principals, which is a term derived from principal teacher, and focusing on instructional leadership is at our core. Our principals cannot focus on the work without operational leadership, community leadership as a part of their core business. You know, just recognizing the depth and breadth of the job of a principal, it is a big deal, and I think Mr. Shield shared, you know, when I think about the idea of being a mayor of your community, it means you're responsible for just about everything, and you can't do it by yourself. With that, there's research that says a principal has, on average, anywhere between 3,000 and 4,000 communications from the time that she or he gets out of their mode of transportation to the time that their day ends. And so communication is an integral part of leadership. I think it also goes to show what we heard today, our communication plan from our communication community, and our communications director, Melissa, and team, who are helping us to become even more effective communicators, particularly with our school-based leaders. So thank you to our principals. With that, I had the opportunity to visit one of our principals and assistant principals this morning at Park Orchard, to see evidence of additional support. What happens when our students come to school every day to get their energies out before they enter the classroom, and then even more to have an opportunity to eat breakfast after the bell. We are now serving close to 360 students for breakfast this morning at Park Orchard. That's more than 200 students per day than we were able to do on a daily basis even last year, and that's in large part support by United Way and our leaders in nutrition services and supporting that work. It is a well-oiled machine. I had the opportunity to walk with Principal O'Connor today, his normal rounds around the community, talking with neighbors, greeting individuals who are part of the community, helping our students and staff and families be safe as they dropped students off to school, and had the opportunity to have conversations with our students during the day while they were transitioning. All the while understanding the importance of what happens in our schools is our most important work. So I do appreciate that. And speaking of our important work, several people we saw today being recognized. We're here yesterday evening for our inaugural open house. One member who was often here, who I would say was the inspiration for yesterday. All of our parents and families were truly the inspiration. One person in general, Mr. Ray Lee, and I think he would not be opposed to my pointing him out. When he shared the story as a parent 20-plus years ago in Kent School District, and one day he discovered that he didn't have all the answers of how to provide support and service for his own children, and he asked a question, where do I find this information out? And someone said, why don't you go to the central office? When he did arrive at what was the central office at the time, he did get those questions answered, and his children were supported more effectively as a result. But he asked the question, okay, I consider myself a well-informed parent, but what happens for those who may not know that this service exists at all? And part of our design thinking conversation led us to schools have open house. I've been a part of them as a school leader and certainly as a parent. Why don't we have an open house for our central administration office? And that beget the planning, the organization from our team at all levels. While we didn't necessarily have the entire community here, those who were here were so engaged and excited by the activities. We look forward to our next open house so that our community understands how we support and serve our students, our staff, our families, and our schools. And finally, tomorrow morning, I have the opportunity to really engage in one of the questions, as we saw in our data today, and there's several other data sets that I can't wait for you to see, about how we are preparing our students for a life that's filled with rigor, a life that's filled with challenge, and with that, how we prepare them in our classrooms. I have the opportunity tomorrow to shadow one of our students, who shall remain nameless at this point, but he is one of our bright and shining stars, and certainly had an opportunity to ask him if he would not mind my shadowing him for a class period. And with as we talk about dual enrollment, as we talk about running start, we have an opportunity to share that and have a conversation about what's working, what's not, and perhaps how can we, as a student and staff, partner and collaborate to ensure that supports are provided for all of our students. That is our core business. While we have operational challenges and opportunities, we have good news that was shared this evening by our team. But our work continues, and I look forward to continuing that work alongside each and every one of you. That concludes my report for this evening. Thank you.
All right. Well, I want to start again by thanking everyone here, thanking everyone for their work, and in particular, principals. I just wonder how much more we can stuff in October. there's other months, so I don't know if they get the right amount of recognition when they're lumped in with everything else, but I do appreciate, I've had many wonderful principals, one in this room, that have I've had the opportunity to share my children with, and it's been a great experience. So thank you so much for what you do. I'm also excited that we were able to acknowledge Filipino American Month as well as Hispanic Heritage Month. I think that it's important, again, to celebrate who our children are and for them to know that we celebrate who they are, because oftentimes the messages that they receive about who they are not always positive. And so I'm really excited that we have the opportunity to share their value with them and to instill that value with them. So I look forward to seeing what some of the activities are that are happening in the buildings with regards to that. I am looking forward to our community conversations coming up tomorrow. I'll be at Kentwood High School, and on Saturday I will be with Karen. Tomorrow I'm with you, Debbie, right, at Kentwood? Okay. And on Saturday with Karen at the Kent Library. I'm looking forward to you encouraging your parents to come out and our community members to come out and speak to us and get to know us a little bit better. And that is about all I have to say. Thank you so much for coming here tonight. It's good to see all of you. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation on Saturday also. A couple things. Well, I noticed some of the contracts we signed and approved today, and I know that our Hispanic, Latino students are they're increasing, and we're seeing the discipline issues rising with them. And I'm just thinking that I wonder if there's some support, more mental health type support out there, whatever kind of support that we could make sure that they have also. So that's just something I noticed. I'm on the Communities and Schools Board, and you mentioned student voice there. We're adding student voice to our board. We had a couple students there yesterday, and it was really interesting because we're trying to figure out the hows, I guess, to get them on the board and to be there for them, facilitate their participation. So we'll be doing that too. Today, I met with Principal Carol Cleveland at iGrad with a young woman who was looking at that as an option. And thank you, Carol, for meeting with us. You just provided so much information and more than I knew. So I was a very good listener, too. So thank you so much for being there for us. I am, let's see, I'm going to the Kent Food Bank breakfast on Friday morning. Looking forward to that. And I think, is that it? I think that's it.
Well, over the past couple weeks, I mean, I really appreciate the work that we've continued to do as a board. If you haven't seen it, we're still working on the things that are important to us, the communications plan, continuing work on the superintendent evaluation goals as we look to, taking that forward to our first shortened 90-day evaluation. But I wanted to highlight the community conversations again, because I know that last time it was kind of a first thing we did. We didn't have a format, and there was a lot to talk about at the time, especially a lot of unresolved things. And so just because some of those things may have been resolved, such as budget or agreements, doesn't mean that there isn't plenty to talk about. And that, as you might have heard tonight, hopefully, that we are interested in establishing this feedback loop. If you have questions and we don't have answers, we'll bring it back, we'll figure it out, and we'll get that information back out to you. So even if you can come and just to give us your question, great. We'll talk about it. We'll hear what you have to say. But you've got our promise that we'll keep pushing it forward and get those answers out there. And I look forward to seeing you all. I'll be at that the breakfast on Friday as well. Good. That'll be great. And that actually concludes my report as well.
So I want to add on a little bit what you said, Ross, about Chris Reichdel's OSPI budget. Yep. And in the same flyer or whatever you want to call it from WASDA, their newsletter, one of the things, there was also something from Marcy Maxwell on there about how important our voice is. And she gave some charts and statistics of when different things were coming, like the McCleary decision, and how few things actually came to people in the Senate and about education. And so I think this is really a great opportunity for us, again, to be reminded that our voice does matter, and to be able to find and take the time to send an email or something and say, hey, please continue to look at education funding and how important that is. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I also wanted to give a thanks out to our principals. I know my son is a first-year teacher, and he called me the other day and said, I'm so grateful for my principal for the support and things that they give to me. And so I've always had good working relationships with the principals that I worked with while my kids were in school, but now I'm seeing it from a little bit of a different light as I'm helping my son navigate some things, and so a special thanks to principals for that. I also wanted to give a shout out for mentoring. Again, they're getting my students, so I'm really excited about that. And one of the things I've kind of been wondering a little bit is how or what we're doing as a district to reach out to maybe some, I'll say, non-traditional groups to help with our mentoring. I know we do a lot of work with our parent groups to say, hey, can you mentor? What are you interested in that way? I know in talking to my parents who are retired, we had a conversation and I said, well, have you ever thought about mentoring? Because they were trying to figure out what they could do. And they went, no, I'd never thought about that. Can we do that? And so I wonder what we're doing to maybe reach out to some of those other people in our community that may be retired and they might not know the opportunities that we don't reach. So just something to think about as we're reaching out. And then I also am looking forward to being with Denise tomorrow night at Kentwood to hear from our community and to continue forward as we work on our communication as a board out to our community, as well as hearing back from people. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Debbie. All right. I want to first thank also all the folks who coordinated the open house last night. I don't know, there were some people saying thank you I didn't know the story of Ray initiating that discussion, and so thank you for sharing that. I really think it's important to understand how these ideas bubble up and the importance behind it. And so I just want to thank staff members for coordinating that, and it was really nice to see and how fun to have the kids kind of see what security looks like and how we can zoom into a school and see the little drawings on the ground that they made the night before. It was just fabulous, to see people really excited about what we do. So thank you to everyone on that. And also, we have a table of people coming for our breakfast, our Kent Food Bank breakfast, and so thank you for coordinating that, and looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow morning, or Friday morning, excuse me. And I wanted to mention that, again, the communication review, the work we've been doing, partly also mention, with regard to what you said, Debbie, the importance of board voice on education and just general voice on education, how important it is for the board to professionalize this idea of a school board because of the time and dedication it takes to pay attention to all of the details that we have to pay attention to, and the time it took the summer to organize, our annual planning and what that entailed. So I do think it's so important to really think about what board members do, and also the professional development that needs to happen for board members to get things done. So I wanted to mention regarding the evaluation, there have been a lot of questions on Dr. Watt's evaluation, and we'll bring it up to the board again next board meeting. We'll finalize it, but we've been having really good discussions on that. And then finally, I wanted to mention the Fiscal Recovery Task Force. People are asking about that, and we are waiting for the amended budget. But also, we had a robust discussion at the work session on what it means, what our objective should be, because if we're talking about a 5% fund balance of the previous year's actual general fund expenditures, then we really have to think about how that's defined. And so we really need to go back to the beginning and discuss that portion before we get to the fiscal recovery task force. So it's all in the work in progress. You know, it's taking time, but we'll get there. And I too look forward to our board conversations happening with Director Hardy tomorrow at Kent Lake. So with that, I think we are adjourned. And thank you all for coming, and appreciate everybody's input and presentations tonight. Have a good evening.
Sign something.
We're adjourned.